The morning sun broke over the Wyoming plains when Ramsey found the dead man sprawled beside his overturned wagon, 3 bullet holes in his chest, and his possessions scattered across the dusty ground like seeds tossed to an uncaring wind. She had been riding toward Rock Springs with her small bundle of belongings, hoping to find work as a seamstress or perhaps a cook, when she spotted the wreckage just off the main road. The man's eyes stared blankly at the cloudless sky, his weathered face frozen in an expression of surprise. Lily dismounted slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs as she scanned the horizon for any sign of the killers. She was 22 years old and had seen death before. Her father had passed from fever 2 winters ago, and her mother had followed him within 6 months, leaving Lily alone in a world that showed little mercy to solitary women. But this was different. This was murder, plain and simple, and the man had clearly been robbed. His pockets were turned inside out, and the wagon bed had been ransacked, though many items remained strewn about as if the thieves had been interrupted or simply took what they could carry quickly. Lily knelt beside the body, checking for any sign of life, though she knew there would be none. The blood had dried dark on his shirt, and his skin had already begun to take on that waxy quality that death brought. She closed his eyes gently, whispering a prayer her mother had taught her. Then she stood and looked at the scattered belongings. There were photographs in silver frames lying face down in the dirt. A woman's shawl caught on a broken wheel spoke, children's toys, letters tied with ribbon, a Bible with a worn leather cover. These were the treasures of a family, the accumulated memories of a life lived. Something fierce and protective rose up in Lily's chest. She could not leave these things here for scavengers and thieves to pick over. This man had people somewhere who would want these memories, who would need to know what had happened to him. She began gathering the items carefully, creating a pile near the body. The July heat was already building, and she knew she needed to work quickly. That was when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching from the east. Lily's hand went instinctively to the small pistol she kept in her saddle bag, but she did not draw it. A single rider came into view, tall in the saddle, and as he drew closer, she could make out more details. He was a cowboy. That much was clear from his worn leather chaps and the rope coiled at his saddle. His hat was pulled low against the sun, but she could see the line of his jaw, strong and clean-shaven. He rode with the easy confidence of a man who spent more time on horseback than on foot. He reined in his horse about 20 feet away, his hand resting casually near his own sidearm. His eyes, she noticed, were a startling blue-green, like the shallow parts of a river. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Trouble here." His voice was deep and measured, carrying clearly across the distance between them. Lily straightened, acutely aware of how she must look, dusty and disheveled, standing over a dead man. "I found him this way about 20 minutes ago. I did not kill him." The cowboy dismounted slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and unthreatening. "Did not think you did, miss. Those wounds are hours old, maybe from last night." He walked closer, his boots crunching on the dry earth. "Name is Harrison Thorne. I work for the Triple Bar Ranch about 15 miles north of Rock Springs. Lily Ramsey." She gestured to the pile of belongings she had been gathering. "I was collecting his things. He should be buried with dignity, and his family will want these items." Harrison's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise and something else crossing his features. Respect, perhaps. He crouched down to examine the body, then stood and surveyed the scene with practiced eyes. "Looks like bandits hit him. Probably took his money and whatever valuables they could spot quickly. You planning to wait here for someone to come along?" I was planning to ride into Rock Springs and report this to the sheriff, but I could not just leave his things here. Lily met his gaze directly. It seemed wrong. Harrison studied her for a long moment, and Lily felt something shift in the air between them, a recognition of kindred spirits perhaps. He nodded slowly. "You have got a good heart, Miss Ramsey, but standing out here alone with a dead man is asking for trouble. Those bandits might come back, or others might pass by and get the wrong idea." He paused, then made a decision she could see form in his eyes. "I will stay with you. We can protect his things together until the sheriff can get out here and notify the family. You do not have to do that. I am sure you have work to attend to. I was heading to town for supplies anyway. This is more important." Harrison began helping her gather the scattered items, handling each one with surprising gentleness for a man with such rough, work-worn hands. "This is somebody's husband, somebody's father. Least we can do is make sure he is treated right." They worked in silence for a while, creating an orderly collection of the man's possessions. Lily found a wedding ring still on his finger and a piece of paper in his vest pocket that had somehow survived the ransacking. She unfolded it carefully. It was a letter dated just 3 days earlier from someone named Margaret in Cheyenne. The handwriting was feminine and neat. "His wife, I think," Lily said softly, showing Harrison the letter. "She was expecting him home." Harrison's jaw tightened. Makes it worse somehow knowing that. He looked down at the dead man with something like sorrow in his eyes. "I will ride to Rock Springs and fetch the sheriff. You should not have to stay here alone. If we both leave, someone might take his things, or animals might." Lily did not finish the sentence. They both knew what happened to bodies left unattended in the wilderness. "Then we both stay," Harrison said firmly. "I saw a creek about a quarter-mile back. I will water the horses and fill our canteens. We might be here a while." As Harrison led the horses away, Lily arranged the dead man's belongings more carefully, creating a kind of shrine around him. She spread the woman's shawl over his chest, hiding the blood, and placed the photographs nearby where they would not blow away. The children's toys, a wooden horse and a small doll with a porcelain face, she set beside the photographs. There were 3 children in one of the pictures, 2 boys and a girl, all dressed in their Sunday best. The youngest could not have been more than 5 years old. Tears pricked at Lily's eyes. These children would grow up without their father. That woman in Cheyenne would wait by the window for a husband who would never return. The unfairness of it struck her like a physical blow. She had learned young that life was not fair, but knowing it and witnessing it were different things entirely. Harrison returned with the horses and handed her a canteen. "Drink. It is going to be a hot day." Lily accepted the water gratefully, suddenly aware of how thirsty she was. She took a long swallow, then asked, "Do you think the sheriff will come today?" "Depends on when we can get word to him and what else he has going on. Could be today, could be tomorrow." Harrison settled himself on the ground in the shade of the overturned wagon, his back against a wheel. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Ramsey. What brings you to Rock Springs?" It was clearly an attempt to pass the time and keep their minds off the grim situation, and Lily appreciated it. She sat down a respectful distance away, arranging her skirts modestly. "I am looking for work. My parents passed, and there was nothing left for me back in Nebraska. I heard Rock Springs was growing, that there might be opportunities." "What kind of work are you looking for?" "I can sew well enough to make a living at it. I can cook and clean. I can read and write and do figures. I am not afraid of hard work." She paused, then added with a touch of defiance, "I know I am a woman alone, and that makes people wary, but I am honest and dependable." Harrison's expression was thoughtful. "I believe you." A woman who would stand guard over a stranger's things in this heat, just because it is the right thing to do, That is someone with backbone." He tipped his hat back slightly. "Rock Springs is growing, that is true. The railroad brought a lot of changes. There are opportunities if you are willing to work for them. Mrs. Chen, who runs the boarding house, is always looking for help. And the dress shop on Main Street, Miss Porter's place, she mentioned needing someone when I was in town last week. You seem to know a lot about what is happening in town." "I get in once or twice a month for supplies and to collect the ranch's mail. You hear things." Harrison pulled a piece of jerky from his saddle bag and offered her half. "How long were you planning to travel alone?" "As long as it took." Lily accepted the jerky, her stomach reminding her she had not eaten since dawn. "I left with enough money for 2 weeks of careful travel. I have been on the road for 9 days. That is a long way for a woman alone. You are braver than most men I know." Lily felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. "I did not have much choice. It was either be brave or starve." They fell into a companionable silence, eating the jerky and watching the horizon. The sun climbed higher and the heat became oppressive. Harrison fashioned a makeshift canopy using the dead man's tarp and some broken wagon boards, creating shade that covered both the body and their resting spot. Lily watched him work, noting the efficient way he moved, the strength in his arms and shoulders. He was handsome, she realized, in that weathered, capable way that Western men often were. But it was more than his looks that drew her attention. It was his quiet kindness, the way he had not hesitated to stay and help a stranger. "Tell me about the ranch," Lily said when he finished with the canopy and returned to his spot in the shade. "The triple bar, you called it?" Harrison's face brightened slightly. "It is a cattle operation, about 3,000 head. The owner, Mr. William Hendricks, he is a fair man. Treats his workers well, pays on time. I have been there for 4 years now, worked my way up to foreman last spring. That is an accomplishment. You must be good at what you do." "I work hard and I know cattle, been around them all my life." Harrison stretched his legs out in front of him. "My father was a rancher down in Colorado, but he lost everything in a bad winter back in '79. I was 17. Headed north looking for work and ended up at the Triple Bar. Mr. Hendricks took a chance on a green kid, and I've tried to prove him right every day since." There was pride in his voice, but also a hint of old pain when he mentioned his father. Lily understood that kind of hurt, the wound that came from losing what you thought was permanent. "I am sorry about your father's ranch. It was a long time ago. He moved back east to live with my sister and her husband. Works in a feed store now. He seems content enough, but I know he misses the open land." Harrison looked out at the vast Wyoming landscape spreading endlessly in all directions. "This country gets in your blood. I could not imagine living anywhere else." "I think I understand that," Lily said softly. "Even Nebraska, flat as it was, there was something about being able to see to the horizon. It felt like freedom." Their eyes met, and Lily felt a jolt of connection that surprised her. She looked away quickly, focusing on the dead man's photographs. But she was intensely aware of Harrison's presence, of the way he seemed solid and reliable in a world that had shown her precious little of either quality. The hours passed slowly. They talked more, sharing stories of their lives, their hopes, their losses. Harrison told her about life on the ranch, about cattle drives and branding and the satisfaction of good, honest work. Lily told him about her mother's garden, about learning to sew by her side, about the schoolhouse where she had learned to read from a teacher who believed education was for everyone, not just boys. They talked about books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams they harbored quietly in their hearts. As afternoon stretched toward evening, Harrison suddenly tensed, his hand moving to his gun. "Riders coming, 3 of them." Lily's heart began to race. She moved closer to the wagon, to the dead man and his things, her own hand finding the small pistol she had tucked into her skirt pocket hours ago. The riders approached slowly, and as they got closer, Lily could see they were rough-looking men, unshaven and dusty. The leader, a man with a scar running down his left cheek, reined in his horse and surveyed the scene with cold eyes. "Well now, what do we have here?" His voice was rough as gravel. "Looks like somebody already found our friend." Harrison stood slowly, his hand resting on his gun belt. His voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "Your friend, you know this man," the scarred man laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "In a manner of speaking, he had something that belonged to us. We came to collect." "He is dead," Lily said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Whatever he had, it is evidence now. The sheriff will be here soon." That was a lie. They had not yet sent word to the sheriff, but the scarred man did not need to know that. One of the other riders, a thin man with nervous eyes, shifted in his saddle. "We do not want trouble, just want to collect what is ours and be on our way." "Nothing here belongs to you," Harrison said flatly. "This man was murdered and robbed. If you know something about that, you best be talking to the law, not scavenging over his body like vultures." The scarred man's expression hardened. Big talk for a cowboy and a woman standing alone in the middle of nowhere. His hand moved toward his gun. In one smooth motion, Harrison drew his revolver, cocking it as he aimed directly at the scarred man's chest. "I would not do that if I were you. And we are not alone. My ranch crew is riding circuit about 2 miles north. I fire this gun, they will come running, and there are 8 of them." Another lie, but a convincing one. Lily kept her own pistol concealed but ready, her finger on the trigger. Her hand was shaking, but she kept her face calm. The 3 riders exchanged glances. The thin one spoke up again, his voice higher now. "This is not worth it, Jack. Let us just go." The scarred man, Jack, stared at Harrison for a long, tense moment. Lily could feel her pulse pounding in her ears, could taste fear metallic on her tongue. Then Jack slowly raised his hands, showing his palms. "Easy there, cowboy. We are leaving." He turned his horse, but not before fixing both Harrison and Lily with a look of pure malice. "But you might want to watch your backs. These roads can be dangerous." The 3 men rode off, heading west at a steady pace. Harrison kept his gun drawn until they were out of sight, then let out a long breath. His hand, Lily noticed, was completely steady. "Were they really the ones who killed him?" Lily asked, her own voice shaking now that the danger had passed. "Maybe, or maybe they just wanted to rob him again." Harrison holstered his gun and turned to her. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I think so." Lily realized she was still gripping her pistol and carefully returned it to her pocket. "Thank you, if you had not been here. But I was here, and you held your ground just fine." Harrison gave her a look of genuine admiration. "Most women would have panicked, but you stayed calm." "That took courage." "I was terrified. Courage is not about not being afraid, it is about doing what needs to be done anyway." He glanced at the western horizon where the sun was beginning to sink lower. "I should ride to Rock Springs now before it gets dark, get the sheriff out here." "Will you be all right alone for a few hours?" Lily wanted to say no, wanted to beg him not to leave her alone with the dead man, and the gathering dusk, and the possibility that those 3 riders might return. But she understood the necessity. Someone had to alert the authorities, and Harrison could ride faster and would be safer making the journey than she would. "I will be fine," she said with more confidence than she felt. "I have my gun, and I can shoot if I need to." Harrison hesitated, clearly torn. Then he reached into his saddle bag and pulled out a rifle, handing it to her. "Take this too. You see anyone approaching that does not look like me or the sheriff, you fire a warning shot into the air. That might scare them off, and I will hear it if I am on the road back." Lily accepted the rifle, feeling the weight of it in her hands. Her father had taught her to shoot, and while she was not an expert marksman, she could hit what she aimed at. "I will be careful." "I know you will." Harrison mounted his horse, then looked down at her. In the golden light of late afternoon, his eyes seemed to hold more than simple concern. "I will be back as soon as I can. You have my word on that." He rode off at a gallop, and Lily watched until he disappeared from sight. Then she was alone with the dead man and the vast Wyoming wilderness. She checked the rifle, making sure it was loaded, then positioned herself with her back to the wagon where she could see in all directions. The sun continued its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. To keep her mind occupied, Lily began looking through the dead man's belongings more carefully, hoping to find something that might identify him more fully. She found documents in a leather satchel that had been overlooked by the thieves. The man's name was Thomas Garrett. He had been a merchant in Cheyenne, returning from a buying trip in Salt Lake City. The documents showed he had done well for himself, had a good business, owned a house on Cary Avenue. There were letters from his wife Margaret, filled with domestic news and expressions of love. The children's names were Joseph, Samuel, and Elizabeth. Lily carefully returned everything to the satchel, her heart heavy. Thomas Garrett had been a good man with a family who loved him, going about his honest business, and he had died for it. The injustice of it burned in her chest. This was the reality of the West, she knew. Violence and death could find anyone, anywhere, regardless of whether they deserved it or not. As darkness fell completely, Lily built a small fire. She knew it might attract attention, but the cold of the desert night was already setting in, and she needed the comfort of light and warmth. She sat with the rifle across her lap, feeding twigs into the flames, and waited. The stars emerged one by one, brilliant against the black sky. A coyote howled somewhere in the distance, and her horse whinnied nervously. She spoke to the animal softly, reassuring it. The hours crawled by. Every sound made her jump, every shadow seemed to hold menace. But she stayed at her post, guarding Thomas Garrett and his belongings as she had promised herself she would do. She thought about Harrison, riding through the dark, and hoped he was safe. She thought about the life she was trying to build, about the uncertainty of her future. And she thought about the way Harrison had looked at her, with respect and something warmer, something that made her feel seen in a way she had not felt in a very long time. It was past midnight when she heard hoofbeats again. Multiple horses this time. Lily stood, raising the rifle, her finger on the trigger. Then she heard Harrison's voice calling out, "Miss Ramsey, it is Harrison and Sheriff Cole. Do not shoot." Relief flooded through her so powerfully she nearly dropped the rifle. As the riders came into the firelight, she could see Harrison, another man wearing a badge, and two deputies. Harrison dismounted quickly and came to her side. "Are you all right? Any more trouble?" "No, it has been quiet." Lily suddenly felt exhausted, all the tension of the long day catching up with her at once. She swayed slightly, and Harrison's hand came to her elbow, steadying her. Sheriff Cole, a grizzled man in his 50s with sharp eyes, approached the body. He examined Thomas Garrett carefully, then looked through the documents Lily had found. "Thomas Garrett from Cheyenne. I know the name. Good man. His wife will be devastated." He looked at Lily and Harrison. "You two did a fine thing, staying with him, protecting his belongings." Not many would have bothered. "It seemed right," Lily said simply. The sheriff nodded approvingly. "My deputies will stay here tonight, guard the body until we can transport it to town tomorrow. You two should come back with me. Miss Ramsey, you look about ready to fall over, and Harrison, Mr. Hendricks will want to know where you have been all day." Harrison looked at Lily. Do you have a place to stay in Rock Springs? I was planning to find a boarding house. Mrs. Chen's place is respectable and clean. The sheriff and I will make sure you get settled there. Harrison began gathering his things, then helped Lily mount her horse. She was so tired she could barely climb into the saddle, and she noticed he stayed close, ready to catch her if she fell. The ride back to Rock Springs took about 45 minutes in the dark. Lily spent most of it fighting to stay awake, rocked by the gentle rhythm of her horse's gait. When they finally reached the town, it was mostly dark, just a few windows still showing lamplight. Sheriff Cole led them to a 2-story building on a side street, where a round-faced Chinese woman answered their knock despite the late hour. Mrs. Chen listened to the sheriff's brief explanation with growing sympathy, then ushered Lily inside. Poor girl. You come, you rest. I have room, very clean, very safe. You stay as long as you need. Harrison helped carry Lily's meager belongings inside. At the door he paused, his hat in his hands. I will come by tomorrow to check on you if that is all right. Lily managed a tired smile. I would like that. Get some rest, Miss Ramsey. You earned it today. His eyes held that warmth again, that something more than simple courtesy. You are quite a woman. Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the night. Mrs. Chen showed Lily to a small but immaculate room on the second floor, brought her water for washing and a plate of cold chicken and bread. Lily ate mechanically, washed her face and hands, and fell into bed fully clothed. She was asleep before her head fully settled on the pillow. She woke late the next morning to sunlight streaming through the window and the sounds of the town going about its business. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then the memories of the previous day flooded back. Thomas Garrett's dead eyes, the 3 threatening riders. Harrison standing beside her, his gun drawn, protecting her without hesitation. Lily washed and changed into her other dress, a simple blue cotton that was showing wear at the cuffs but was at least clean. She brushed and repinned her hair, studying her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. She looked tired, but there was something different in her eyes. A new strength, perhaps, born of having faced danger and not backing down. Downstairs, Mrs. Chen insisted on feeding her a substantial breakfast of eggs and toast and coffee. The boarding house was quiet, most of the residents already gone about their day's work. As Lily was finishing her meal, there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Chen answered it, then returned with a smile. You have visitor, that handsome cowboy from last night. Lily's heart skipped unexpectedly. She smoothed her skirts and went to the parlor where Harrison waited, hat in hand. He looked freshly washed, his dark hair still damp, wearing a clean shirt. He smiled when he saw her. Miss Ramsey. You look much better than you did last night. I feel better. Thank you for checking on me. Lily gestured to the sofa. Please sit down. They sat, maintaining a proper distance, but Lily was acutely aware of his presence. He smelled faintly of soap and leather and something else, something distinctly male that made her pulse quicken. I wanted to let you know that the sheriff sent a telegram to Cheyenne this morning, to Mrs. Garrett. Her brother will be coming to collect the body and the belongings. Should be here in 2 or 3 days. Harrison's expression grew somber. The sheriff also wanted me to tell you that those 3 men we encountered, they found them this morning, tried to rob the general store. There was a shootout. 2 are dead, 1 is in custody. Lily felt a chill. The scarred man. Dead. The one they captured was the nervous fellow, the thin one. He confessed to killing Mr. Garrett, said it was supposed to be just a robbery, but Garrett fought back and Jack shot him. They took his money pouch and his pocket watch, left everything else because they heard riders coming and panicked. So it is over. It is over. Justice was served, more or less. Harrison leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I also wanted to ask if you had any luck finding work yet. I have not had time to look. I just woke up an hour ago. I spoke to Mr. Hendricks this morning, told him about everything that happened. He was impressed by your character, by what you did for a stranger. The ranch house, his home, they are looking for someone to help his wife with the housekeeping and cooking. Mrs. Hendricks is not in the best health, needs assistance. It would be a live-in position, room and board plus $30 a month. Would you be interested? $30 a month was excellent wages for such work. More than that, it was security, a real position. But Lily hesitated. I do not want you to feel obligated to help me just because of what happened yesterday. That is not what this is. Harrison met her eyes directly. You proved yourself to be honest, brave, and decent. Those are qualities Mr. Hendricks values. The position is real and it needs filling. You would be doing them a favor as much as they would be doing you one. He paused. And I will be honest with me, I would like knowing you are close by. I would like the chance to get to know you better. The admission hung in the air between them. Lily felt her cheeks warm, but she did not look away. I would like that too. Harrison's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Then you will take the position, if Mrs. Hendricks approves of me, yes, she will, I am certain of it. Harrison stood. I need to head back to the ranch, but I could come by tomorrow with the wagon to take you out to meet them. Would that suit? That would be perfect. At the door, Harrison paused, turning back to her. Lily, what you did yesterday, standing guard over that man, it showed me who you are inside. And I want you to know that I meant what I said. You are quite a woman. I feel lucky to have met you, even under such difficult circumstances. I feel the same way, Lily admitted softly. If I had not found Mr. Garrett, if you had not come along when you did, we never would have met. Then maybe some good came from that tragedy after all. He put on his hat, tipping it to her. Until tomorrow, Miss Ramsey. Until tomorrow, Mr. Thorne. After he left, Lily stood by the window watching him ride away down the street. Mrs. Chen came up beside her, chuckling softly. That one, he likes you very much. I can see it in his eyes. We only just met yesterday. Sometimes that is all it takes. One moment, one look, and you know. Mrs. Chen patted her arm. He is good man. Strong, kind, you could do much worse. Lily could not argue with that. She spent the rest of the day exploring Rock Springs, familiarizing herself with the town that might become her home. It was a bustling place, growing rapidly thanks to the railroad. There were the usual establishments, saloons and general stores, a bank, a church, a schoolhouse, a doctor's office. She met Miss Porter, the dressmaker Harrison had mentioned, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who looked Lily up and down appraisingly. So you are the woman who guarded Thomas Garrett's body. The whole town is talking about it. Miss Porter's tone was approving. That took backbone. We could use more women like you around here. Thank you, madam. If the ranch position does not work out, you come see me. I could use someone who knows their way around a needle and is not afraid of hard work. It was gratifying to have options, to feel wanted. For the first time since her parents died, Lily felt the stirrings of hope for her future. The next day, Harrison arrived promptly at 10 in the morning with a wagon. He helped Lily load her few possessions, then assisted her up onto the seat beside him. As they rode out of town toward the Triple Bar Ranch, Lily was struck by the beauty of the landscape. The land here was different from Nebraska, more dramatic with its rocky outcroppings and distant mountains. The sky seemed bigger somehow, more blue. It is beautiful here, she said. It is, never gets old for me. Harrison glanced at her. You seem more at ease today. I suppose I am. Yesterday I was a woman alone with no prospects. Today I have possibilities. She smiled at him. You have been very kind to me, Harrison. I want you to know I appreciate it. You made it easy to be kind. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I hope you do not mind me asking, but is there anyone back in Nebraska? Anyone you left behind?" Lily understood what he was really asking. "No. There was a man once, a farmer's son. We walked out together a few times, but after my father died, he stopped calling. I think his family thought I would be a burden without a dowry or property. Then he was a fool." The certainty in Harrison's voice made Lily's heart flutter. "What about you? Is there anyone waiting for you?" "No one. I have been too focused on work, on building something for myself. Never met anyone who made me want to change that." He looked at her meaningfully. "Until now." The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Lily felt breathless, aware that something significant was happening, that the trajectory of her life was shifting in ways she had not anticipated 2 days ago. The Triple Bar Ranch came into view over a rise. It was impressive, a sprawling operation with a large ranch house, multiple barns, corrals full of cattle, and several smaller buildings for the ranch hands. Everything looked well-maintained and prosperous. Harrison drove the wagon up to the main house, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and flower boxes in the windows. A woman emerged from the house as they pulled up. She was in her late 40s, gray-haired and thin, moving with the careful deliberation of someone managing chronic pain. But her smile was warm and genuine. "You must be Miss Ramsey. Harrison has told us all about you." She extended a hand. "I am Caroline Hendricks. Please come inside." The interior of the house was comfortable and homey, with polished wood floors and furniture that spoke of quality and care. Mrs. Hendricks led Lily to a sitting room where a large man with iron gray hair and a weathered face sat reading a newspaper. He stood when they entered. "William Hendricks, miss. Pleased to meet you." His handshake was firm but not crushing. "Harrison tells me you have good character." That means a lot in these parts. They spent an hour talking, the Hendricks asking about her background, her skills, her expectations. Lily was honest about everything, sensing that these were people who valued straightforwardness. Mrs. Hendricks showed her the room she would occupy, a pleasant space on the ground floor with a window overlooking the garden. They discussed her duties, which would include cooking, cleaning, laundry, and helping Mrs. Hendricks with whatever she needed. "I cannot do as much as I used to, Mrs. Hendricks admitted. "Arthritis in my hands and back. Some days are better than others, but I need someone I can rely on, someone who will not judge me on my bad days." "I would never judge you for that, madam. My mother struggled with pain in her later years. I understand how difficult it can be." Mrs. Hendricks's eyes grew misty. "Then I think you will do just fine here, dear. When can you start?" "As soon as you need me." "How about today?" Mr. Hendricks said with a chuckle. "No sense in wasting time when we have all agreed." And just like that, Lily had a home. Harrison helped her bring her things in from the wagon, carrying them to her room. When they were alone for a moment in the hallway, he said quietly, "I am glad you are staying. Very glad. So am I. I should get back to work, but I will see you at supper. We all eat together here, family and the foreman. It is Mrs. Hendricks's rule. I look forward to it." Lily settled into life at the Triple Bar Ranch with surprising ease. Mrs. Hendricks was a kind employer, patient when Lily was learning the layout of the house and the family's preferences. Mr. Hendricks was gruff but fair, treating Lily with respect. The work was hard but satisfying. She woke before dawn to start breakfast for the household, spent her days cooking and cleaning and helping Mrs. Hendricks with correspondence and household accounts. In the evenings, after supper was cleared and the dishes washed, she had time to herself. But the best part of each day was the time she spent with Harrison. He took his meals with the family as foreman, and gradually Lily, and he began finding excuses to be near each other. He would offer to help her carry water from the well. She would bring him lemonade when he was working in the barn. They would take walks after supper, ostensibly so Harrison could check on the livestock, but really so they could talk. They talked about everything. Harrison told her about his dreams of someday having his own ranch, a smaller operation that he could manage himself. Lily shared her love of reading, her secret hope that she might someday help establish a library in Rock Springs. They discovered shared values, similar views on faith and family, and the importance of treating people decently regardless of their station in life. 3 weeks after Lily arrived at the ranch, Mrs. Garrett's brother came to Rock Springs to collect Thomas Garrett's body and belongings. Lily and Harrison attended the small service the town held for him, standing together in the church while the minister spoke of a good man taken too soon. Afterward, Mrs. Garrett's brother, a tall man named Richard, sought them out. "I wanted to thank you both personally," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My sister Margaret, she wanted you to know that your kindness meant everything to her. Knowing that strangers cared enough to protect Thomas and his things, it gave her comfort in an impossible time." He handed Lily an envelope. Inside was a letter from Margaret Garrett, written in that same neat hand Lily had seen before. It thanked her for her compassion and included a small gold locket as a gift. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she read the letter. "She did not need to do this," Lily whispered. "She wanted to. Please accept it." Richard shook hands with both of them. "The world needs more people like you too, thank you." After he left, Harrison walked Lily back to the wagon. She was still clutching the letter and the locket. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I am. It is just overwhelming sometimes how much one moment can change everything. If I had ridden past that wagon, if I had not stopped, none of this would have happened. I would not have met you. I would not have this position. I would not have a home." Harrison stopped walking and turned to face her. They were alone on the quiet street, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. "Lily, I have been wanting to say something to you for weeks now, but I was not sure if it was too soon. But after today, after being reminded how quickly life can change, I do not want to wait any more." Lily's heart began to race. "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you." The words came out in a rush, as if he had been holding them back for too long. "I know we have not known each other long, but I have never felt this way about anyone. You are brave and kind and good, and when I am with you, I feel like I have found something I did not even know I was looking for. I do not expect you to feel the same way right now, but I wanted you to know. I wanted to be honest about my feelings." Lily felt tears slip down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Harrison, I am falling in love with you too. I have been almost from the moment you offered to stay with me that first day. You make me feel safe and valued and seen. I never expected to find this when I came to Wyoming, but I am so grateful I did." Harrison's face broke into a grin of pure joy. He took her hands in his, and Lily felt the calluses on his palms, the strength in his fingers. "Lily Ramsey, would you allow me to court you properly? To take you to church socials and dances and anywhere else I can think of just to spend time with you?" "Yes, I would like that very much." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "You have made me very happy." That night, lying in her bed at the ranch, Lily held the locket from Margaret Garrett and thought about the strange paths life took. Death and tragedy had brought her to this place, but out of that darkness had come light. She had found work, a home, and something she had not dared to hope for: love. The courtship that followed was one of the happiest times of Lily's life. Harrison was attentive but respectful, always mindful of her reputation. They attended church together on Sundays, sitting side by side in the pew while Mrs. Hendricks beamed at them knowingly. They went to a barn dance in town, and Harrison proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, spinning her around the floor until she was breathless with laughter. They took long rides across the ranch property, Harrison showing her the places he loved best. A hidden creek where wildflowers grew in profusion, a high point where you could see for miles in every direction, a grove of cottonwood trees that turned golden in the fall. They talked about their future, carefully at first, then with growing certainty. Harrison shared his plans for saving enough money to buy land of his own. Lily told him about her dream of having a family, of creating the kind of loving home her parents had given her. Their dreams began to merge, becoming a shared vision of the life they would build together. Mr. and Mrs. Hendricks approved heartily of the match. "That boy needs a good woman to settle him down," Mr. Hendricks told Lily one day while she was serving him coffee. "And you need someone who will appreciate what you bring to a marriage. You are well matched." By late fall, after 5 months of courtship, Harrison asked Mr. Hendricks for permission to marry Lily. Mr. Hendricks gave his blessing readily. That evening, Harrison took Lily for a walk to the cottonwood grove, where the trees were dressed in their autumn gold. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, he got down on one knee. "Lily Ramsey, you are the finest woman I have ever known. You have made me happier than I thought possible. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" He produced a simple gold band set with a small sapphire, and Lily recognized it as having cost a significant portion of his savings. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes, Harrison. Yes, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her for the first time. It was tender and sweet and full of promise, and Lily felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. They were married in December, in the small church in Rock Springs, with what felt like half the town in attendance. Mrs. Chen wept openly, and Miss Porter declared it the most romantic thing she had ever witnessed. Mrs. Hendricks had helped Lily make her wedding dress, a simple but elegant creation in cream-colored silk. Harrison wore a new suit, and Lily thought he had never looked more handsome. The minister spoke of love and commitment, of the bonds that tie two people together through good times and bad. As Lily and Harrison exchanged their vows, she thought back to that July day when she had found Thomas Garrett's body. If someone had told her then that this tragedy would lead to her standing here, marrying the love of her life, she would not have believed it. But life was strange that way, weaving unexpected beauty from threads of sorrow. Mr. Hendricks gave them a week away from the ranch for a honeymoon. They stayed at a hotel in Cheyenne, spending their days exploring the city and their nights discovering the joys of married life. Harrison was a tender and patient husband, and Lily felt herself falling more deeply in love with him each day. When they returned to the Triple Bar, they moved into a small house on the ranch property that Mr. Hendricks had designated for his foreman. It had 2 bedrooms, a parlor, and a kitchen, and Lily set about making it into a home. She sewed curtains and arranged their few pieces of furniture, planted herbs in a small garden plot. Harrison built her a bookshelf and surprised her with 3 new books he had ordered from a catalog. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lily continued to help Mrs. Hendricks, but with reduced hours now that she had her own household to manage. Harrison worked from dawn to dusk, managing the ranch, but he always made time for supper with Lily, and they spent their evenings by the fire, talking or reading or simply enjoying each other's company. In the spring, Lily discovered she was expecting their first child. Harrison was overjoyed, already planning how he would build a cradle and child-proof the house. Mrs. Hendricks was thrilled, immediately beginning to knit baby clothes. The pregnancy was relatively easy, and Lily bloomed with health and happiness. Their son was born in October of 1884, a healthy baby boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's hazel eyes. They named him Henry Thomas Thorne, the middle name honoring the man whose death had brought them together. Harrison held his son with a reverence that brought tears to Lily's eyes, his large hands cradling the tiny body with infinite gentleness. "He is perfect," Harrison whispered, "just like his mother." Watching her husband with their son, Lily felt a contentment so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was what she had dreamed of, this family, this love, this home. She thought of her parents, wishing they could have met Harrison and seen their grandson, but she felt their presence in her heart, their blessing on the life she had created. As Henry grew, he proved to be a curious and adventurous child, toddling after his father whenever Harrison was home, fascinated by the horses and cattle. Lily taught him his letters and numbers, read to him every night before bed. Harrison showed him how to feed the chickens and how to be gentle with the animals. They were building a life rich with love and purpose. 2 years after Henry was born, Lily gave birth to a daughter they named Emma Rose. She had Lily's delicate features and Harrison's blue-green eyes, and she wrapped her father completely around her tiny finger from the moment he first held her. Harrison, the tough cowboy who could rope a steer and ride the wildest horse, turned to putty when his little girl smiled at him. The Hendricks treated Lily and Harrison's children as honorary grandchildren, doting on them and spoiling them with sweets and small gifts. Mrs. Hendricks's health had declined further, and Lily knew their time with her was precious. She made sure to visit often, bringing the children to brighten the older woman's days. In the spring of 1887, Mr. Hendricks called Harrison into his office for a private conversation. When Harrison emerged an hour later, his face was stunned. He found Lily hanging laundry behind their house, the children playing nearby. "Lily, you need to hear this." Harrison's voice was shaking. "Mr. Hendricks is selling us 500 acres of ranch land at a price we can afford. He is setting up a loan with terms we can actually meet. He says we have earned it, that he wants to see us have our own operation while he is still alive to help us get started." Lily dropped the shirt she was holding. "Harrison, that is incredible. Are you certain he has already drawn up the papers?" The land borders the eastern section of the Triple Bar, good grazing land with a creek running through it. "Lily, we can build our own ranch. We can have everything we have dreamed about." They embraced there in the yard while the children ran around their legs, both of them crying tears of joy and gratitude. That night, they lay awake talking about their plans. Harrison would continue as foreman for the Triple Bar while slowly building up their own herd. They would start small, adding cattle gradually as they could afford them. Eventually, in a few years perhaps, Harrison could transition to managing their own ranch full-time. "We should call it something that means something," Lily said, lying in the circle of her husband's arms. "Something that honors how we came to be here." Harrison was quiet for a moment, then said, "The Faithful Stand Ranch, because you stood guard faithfully over a stranger and I stood with you, and that faithfulness brought us to this. It is perfect." Over the next 3 years, they worked tirelessly to build the Faithful Stand Ranch. Harrison and the ranch hands constructed a modest house on the property, just 3 rooms to start, but it was theirs. They moved in during the summer of 1888, and Lily felt a fierce pride as she stepped over the threshold of her own home for the first time. Harrison carried her across, just as he had on their wedding night, making her laugh. The herd grew slowly but steadily. Harrison had a gift for breeding cattle, and the Faithful Stand stock became known for being hardy and healthy. Lily managed the household and helped with the accounts, her neat handwriting filling ledgers with careful records of every purchase and sale. Together, they made a formidable team. Their third child, a son they named William after Mr. Hendricks, was born in the new house in the fall of 1889. And 2 years later, their youngest, a daughter named Caroline for Mrs. Hendricks, completed their family. Mrs. Hendricks passed away peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1892. The whole community mourned her loss, but none more than Lily, who had come to love the older woman dearly. At the funeral, Lily held Mrs. Hendricks's hand one last time and whispered her thanks for all the kindness she had shown, for taking a chance on a stranger, for helping her build a life. Mr. Hendricks lived another 5 years before joining his wife. He died knowing that the triple bar would continue, sold to a neighboring rancher who promised to keep on the existing hands. But more importantly, he died knowing that Harrison and Lily were thriving, that his faith in them had been rewarded. By the turn of the century, the faithful Stand Ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres, with a herd of several hundred cattle. Harrison had hired 3 permanent hands, and during the busy seasons, they took on additional help. The small house had been expanded, now boasting 6 rooms and a wide front porch where Lily loved to sit in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky. The children were growing. Henry, now 15, was already as tall as his father and working the ranch with the hands, learning the business from the ground up. Emma, 13, was a skilled rider and had a way with the horses that amazed everyone. William, at 11, showed an aptitude for figures and often helped his mother with the ranch accounts. And little Caroline, just 9, was the family's ray of sunshine, always singing or laughing or finding beauty in the smallest things. One evening in June of 1900, as Lily and Harrison sat on their porch watching the stars emerge, Lily leaned her head against her husband's shoulder. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked softly. "The day we met." "All the time," Harrison admitted. "I think about how close I came to riding a different route that day. If I had, we never would have met. Our children would not exist. This ranch, this life, none of it would be real." I think about that too, and about Thomas Garrett. I wish he had lived, that his children could have grown up with their father. But I am grateful that his death was not meaningless, that something good came from it. Harrison took her hand, his thumb rubbing across the gold band she had worn for 16 years. "You gave him dignity in death by standing guard over him. You showed me what kind of woman you were in those few hours. You were brave and compassionate and stubborn in the best possible way. And you stood with me. You did not have to, but you did. You have been standing with me ever since." "I always will." Harrison kissed her forehead tenderly. "You are my whole heart, Lily Thorne. You and our children, this ranch, this life we have built together. It is more than I ever dreamed I could have." Lily turned to look at him, seeing the lines that time and hard work had etched into his face, the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair. He was 40 years old now, still strong and vital, but bearing the marks of a life fully lived. And she loved him more at this moment than she had even on their wedding day, because this love had been tested and proven, deepened by shared joys and sorrows, strengthened by the life they had built together. "I love you, Harrison Thorne. I loved you the day you offered to stay with me beside that wagon, and I love you more with every year that passes. I love you too, Lily, always." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the night deepen around them. From inside the house came the sounds of their children preparing for bed, Emma's voice raised in gentle admonishment of her younger siblings, Henry's deeper tones responding. These were the sounds of home, of family, of a life rich with meaning and purpose. In the years that followed, the faithful Stand Ranch continued to prosper. Henry eventually took over the day-to-day management, allowing Harrison to ease into a less physically demanding role. Emma surprised everyone by marrying a horse trader and starting her own business breeding and training horses, operating from a portion of the ranch land her father deeded to her. William went to college, one of the first in the family to do so, and returned to become the town's accountant, though he always helped with the ranch during busy seasons. Caroline became a teacher, opening a school in Rock Springs that welcomed children regardless of their family's ability to pay. Lily and Harrison became grandparents many times over, and they filled their later years with the joy of watching their children's children grow. The house on the faithful Stand Ranch became a gathering place for the whole extended family, especially during holidays and important occasions. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1914, their children organized a celebration at the ranch. The entire community turned out, testament to the respect and affection Harrison and Lily had earned over the decades. As Lily looked around at the crowd, at the children running and playing at the tables laden with food, at her husband standing tall and proud despite the gray in his hair and the slight stoop in his shoulders, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Miss Porter, now in her 70s and long retired from the dress shop, sought Lily out. "You have built quite a legacy here, my dear. A beautiful family, a successful ranch, the respect of everyone who knows you. Your parents would be so proud." "Thank you," Lily said, her eyes misting. "I wish they could have seen all this." "I suspect they can," Miss Porter said wisely. "And I suspect Thomas Garrett can too. You honored him that day, and you have lived a life that honors his memory. That is no small thing." Later that evening, after the guests had departed, and the children had taken their own families home, Lily and Harrison walked out to the small family cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch. They had buried the Hendricks there with the family's permission and had already selected their own plots beside them. But there was another marker there, one they had placed years ago. It was a simple stone that read, "In memory of Thomas Garrett, whose death brought two souls together. May he rest in peace, knowing his loss was not in vain." They had erected it with Margaret Garrett's blessing, after corresponding with her for several years following that terrible day. She had eventually remarried, finding happiness again, and had told them that knowing Harrison and Lily's love story gave her comfort, a sense that even from tragedy, good could grow. Harrison put his arm around Lily's waist as they stood before the stone. "I still think about him sometimes. Wonder what kind of man he was, what his voice sounded like, what he dreamed about. I think he was a good man who deserved better than he got, but I like to believe that somewhere, somehow, he knows that his death had meaning, that it brought us together, that it led to all of this." Lily gestured to the ranch spread out below them, to the house glowing with lamplight, to the land they had cultivated and loved. "I believe that too," Harrison said softly. They stood there for a long while, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Wyoming sky, just as they had stood together all those years ago beside a dead stranger's wagon. They had stood guard then over a man's possessions, protecting his memory, honoring his humanity. And in that act of simple decency, they had found each other. The years continued to roll by, bringing the changes that time always brings. Harrison's strength finally began to fail in his late 60s, and he passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1922, with Lily holding his hand. The whole county turned out for his funeral, testament to the impact he had made on the community. Lily mourned him deeply, but she took comfort in knowing they had had nearly 40 years together, years filled with love and laughter and hard work and shared dreams realized. She lived another 12 years, long enough to see her grandchildren grown and starting families of their own. She spent her final years in the ranch house, surrounded by family, still sharp-minded and bright-eyed, full of stories about the old days. Her children and grandchildren would gather around her chair by the fire, listening to her tales of the Wild West, of building a ranch from nothing, of the day she met their grandfather beside a dead stranger's wagon. When Lily Thorne passed away in 1934 at the age of 74, she was laid to rest beside Harrison in the family cemetery, overlooking the ranch they had built together. Her children gathered around the grave, holding their own children, already telling them the story of how their great-grandparents had met. The faithful Stand Ranch continued to operate, passed down through the generations, a lasting testament to what two people could build when they stood together. And though the world changed around it, though the Wild West became tamed and modern conveniences came to replace the old ways, the story of Harrison and Lily Thorne lived on, told and retold around dinner tables and campfires, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, even in the face of death and violence and loss, love could bloom. It had started with a simple act of human decency. A young woman refusing to let a stranger's death be meaningless, refusing to leave his possessions to scavengers and thieves. It had continued with a cowboy who saw that act and recognized in it something worth standing beside, worth protecting, worth building a life around. And it had grown into something beautiful and lasting, a love that survived decades, that created life and legacy and meaning. They had stood guard together over a dead stranger's things until his family came. And in that standing, in that faithfulness to a man they had never known, they had found each other. They had found everything that mattered. And that, their descendants would say for generations to come, was how love was supposed to be. Not easy, not simple, but worth every moment of standing firm, worth every challenge faced together, worth every year of building something that would outlast them both. The faithful Stand Ranch still operates to this day, run by the great-great-grandchildren of Harrison and Lily Thorne. The house has been expanded and modernized, but the original 3 rooms remain, preserved as they were, a museum to the love story that started it all. Visitors can still see Lily's kitchen, Harrison's chair by the fireplace, the bedroom where their children were born. And on the hill overlooking it all, the cemetery remains, with its simple stones marking the resting places of those who built this legacy. The stone for Thomas Garrett is still there too, weathered by nearly a century of Wyoming seasons but still legible. Flowers are left there regularly by the family, a tradition started by Lily and Harrison and carried on faithfully by each generation since. They honor the man who never knew them, whose death gave them life, whose tragedy became the foundation of their joy. It is a reminder that every life matters, that every death has meaning if we choose to give it meaning, that standing firm in our principles and our compassion can change the course of history in ways we cannot imagine. Harrison and Lily Thorne stood guard together over a stranger's things until his family came, and in that act of simple human kindness, they found a love that would echo through the generations, a legacy that would outlast them both, a story that would inspire countless others to stand firm in what is right, no matter the cost. Their story reminds us that the Wild West was not just a place of violence and lawlessness, though it was certainly those things. It was also a place where people of character could find each other, where a chance meeting could change everything, where love could grow even in the harshest soil. It was a place where standing guard over what mattered, whether that was a stranger's possessions or the values you held dear or the person you loved, was not just admirable but essential. Harrison and Lily Thorne lived that truth every day of their lives together. They stood guard over each other, over their family, over the land they loved, over the legacy they were building. They stood firm through drought and harsh winters, through economic hardships and personal losses, through all the challenges that life in the West could throw at them. And they stood together, always together, from that first day beside the wagon until death finally parted them. That is the story the family tells, passed down now through 5 generations. That is the legacy that lives on in every acre of the faithful Stand Ranch, in every child born bearing the names Thorne or Ramsey, in every act of kindness performed because someone remembered the story of how their ancestors met. It is a love story, yes, but it is also a story about character, about choosing to do what is right even when it is difficult, about recognizing that every human life has value and deserves to be honored. On quiet evenings, when the wind blows across the Wyoming plains and the sun sets in a blaze of orange and gold, if you stand in the cemetery on the hill above the faithful Stand Ranch, you can almost feel their presence. Harrison and Lily, together still, watching over the legacy they created, proud of the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carry on their work, satisfied that their love story continues to inspire and guide those who come after. They stood guard over a dead stranger's things until his family came. The cowboy stood with her. And from that standing came everything that followed, a love that conquered time itself, a legacy that will endure as long as there are hearts capable of understanding that the greatest love stories are built not on grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but on the simple choice to stand firm in what is right, to stand beside someone who shares your values, to stand together no matter what the world throws at you. That is the story of Harrison and Lily Thorne, a fast-paced, heartfelt love story from the Wild West, a reminder that love can bloom anywhere, even beside a dead stranger's wagon on a dusty Wyoming road, if only we have the courage to stand guard over what matters and the wisdom to recognize when we have found someone worth standing beside for the rest of our lives.